Let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Ann Wood. I'm the Senior Director of Trip Development and Operations here at Mountain Travel Sobek. We're so glad you could join us today for this presentation about Slovenia and the stunning, diverse landscapes that stretch beyond its borders. With me today from Slovenia, actually in Slovenia, is Mountain Travel Sobek's local expert, Luka Poznic. For over 25 years, Luka has trekked through the Himalayas, traveled across Tibet, crossed the vast Sahara Desert, spent months cycling through Patagonia, and has even visited the penguin colonies of Antarctica. However, his favorite journey is usually his journey home to the Socha Valley of Slovenia, a place that remains one of the most beautiful places he's ever been. Thank you for joining us today, Luka. Tell us more about the place that you call home.
Hi, everybody. My name is Luka. I'm really happy to be with you here. Hi, Anne. And yes, right now I'm staying at my cottage in the Slovenian Alps, in the remote valley of the turquoise Socha River. You can see some photos right now here. And yeah, I mean, this is the place where I really like to come back after each of my travels. So this is an alpine valley in the western part of Slovenia. So actually, just over there is Italy. I can actually hike across it and maybe even get an espresso in a mountain cut already on the Italian side. And the nature here is just crazy. It's so lush, it's so green, surrounded by limestone alpine peaks. There's many waterfalls, and it's a happy place. I'm originally from Ljubljana, the capital of Slovenia, which is a nice small town, very much influenced by the Habsburgs, by the Austrians. But then when I come here, my second home, this is where I really like to stay. And every day I'm more aware of the fact that this is so beautiful because sometimes we just strive to go traveling, abroad to faraway places, and I still do that all the time, and I like it a lot for the sake of adventure. But when I come back home, I get to appreciate also the beautiful nature we have here. So today I would like to talk about Slovenia, my homeland. We can also already move to the next. I'll move to the next slide. And as Anne mentioned, we also organize and guide travel around Slovenia. So there will be a bit Croatia, a bit of Austria around, a bit of Italy, and it's all together is really a beautiful combination. What you can do here in our region. So there is a map of Slovenia that you can see. So maybe just a little bit geographical info.
Oh,
So
Luka, you have to move to the next slide.
I am actually. Um, I am on the slide that shows the map of Slovenia. Can you see it? Or
No, let me. There you
uh,
go.
yep. So we see the map of Slovenia.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Sorry, guys. Where is Slovenia? First of all, it's a small country, and it's not Slovakia because we get mistaken all the time. Slovakian people and Slovenian people, but actually we are quite far away. So Slovenia lies right next to Austria, so it borders Austria, it borders Italy and Croatia, and a little bit of Hungary. So from capital, which is called Ljubljana, there is only 2 hours driving to Venice and 3 hours to Vienna. You can reach Alps from the capital within 25 minutes, and 45 minutes driving down south would bring you already to the Adriatic. So it's a really cool region. Area to explore because it's got a lot of variety in, let's say, in a quite small area. So Slovenia back in the time, um, it used to be part of Yugoslavia. So after the Second World War, it was part of Yugoslavia. And then we got independent in 91. Back in the history, it was part of the Habsburg Empire, so the Austrians. The southern part was belonged to Venetians. And every now and then we would get back in the history, there would be attacks or also the interference and contact with the Ottomans. So basically, it was a melting pot of different civilizations, people, and even nowadays, it is very interesting because of that. We will see there is different architecture, we have different food, so a very versatile place to visit. But today I would like to focus mainly on the nature, on the Julian Alps. Uh, can we see the next slide? Thank you, Anne. So Slovenia has the eastern part of European Alps. Our part of the mountains is called Julian Alps, and right now it's a hotspot. It's a hotspot for hiking. I mean, it gotten really popular because our part of the Alps that actually stretches also across the border to Italy is very different from the Central Alps that you can find in Chamonix or in Zermatt, Switzerland, France, because they're a little bit lower. Speaking of, altitude, they're much
Altitude, yeah.
greener. Yeah, altitude, yeah. So they are much greener. There is a lot of lakes, lots of flowers, greenery, and also the Alpine valleys. They start at a very low elevation. Usually, they can start already at the elevation of, let's say, 1,000 feet. But then you have like a steep slopes getting you up. So you're walking through the greenery, through the woods, and suddenly you have majestic vistas of the limestone peaks.
This is something that really surprised me, Luka, when I was traveling over there with you, is I was not expecting Slovenia to be as green as it is. It really reminded me a lot of the Pacific Northwest in the United States. It was very lush, very green, which makes the hiking really amazing, like you just said, because you spend part of your hiking through the trees, and then eventually these vast views just unveil themselves. You know, you get up above the tree line and the scenery changes dramatically. And I thought that was really unique to this area and really beautiful.
Yeah, totally. And you know what? I mean, this is really, really funny because I started hiking not with my father, not with my grandfather, but actually with my grandmother. And you know what? Because she was, I mean, she's still with us, I'm with me, but I mean, she's very old now, but she's like a total pro and expert of all the herbs and flowers and stuff. So when I was like a child, she would take me up on the mountain, just because she was like picking up herbs for her herbal teas and infusions and for some remedies. And this is how it started. And now when we travel with people here, it's really amazing, especially in spring, summertime, where you have all these flowers and herbs. And then when you move up, you can do some serious hiking. And I'm very confident to say that hiking here, can be as spectacular as Patagonia, or stuff in Himalayas, just a little bit different. But I would call it one of the top landscapes that you can see. And for that reason, I really love it. Can we move on?
Yeah.
And this is the second part. So you have the limestone peaks, and then you have the valleys that surround the Julian Alps, or they go deep into the heart of the Alps, at the foot of the mountain where we start our hikes. And it's all about the water. We have the Sochi River that I mentioned before. That's my home place. This is actually the western part, so we get really a lot of rain, and for that reason, it's really lush. And then all these rivers, and they're all in Europe. We call it Grade 1, which means that most of the time you can drink out of the river. So they're really super clean. We have great trout here, and then all the hikes. So sometimes you don't have to climb the mountain all the way to the top, but you just enjoy these amazing hikes along the rivers to the secret waterfalls, and then you would climb like a superb viewpoint and get this view, 360 view. On one side there would be the Adriatic Sea. You can see all over to the Austrian Italian side, and it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing to see that.
And the water really is that blue too. This isn't just punched up for
Yeah, it's not a
photography.
it's not a Photoshop. Yeah, it really is. Especially you can see my wife on the upper right-hand photo, and it's just crazy. I mean, this is like 3-4 miles away from me. I did some trail running there yesterday, and even now it's not late spring and summer yet. So the nature is just slowly changing into the green, but the water is already of this color. So it's quite shocking when you see that, in a good way, of course. So the bay, I mean, the place where, of course, because we do hikes, we do hiking, would be the focus would be on the Julian Alps to explore all around. But then, the hikes are not just for the beautiful vistas, but there is also very interesting community living here. So this part of Slovenia is very, very famous for the cheese making. So you have a very strong herdsman, let's say shepherd community up on the mountain. So people move in the start of the spring, they move up on the mountain, and they produce excellent local cheeses, and then like Nyami ricotta, all kind of cool stuff. And not just that. When I think of Slovenia, when I think of my region, I usually think about different kind of produce, and one would be that we are really famous for would be honey. So back in the time of the Habsburgs, of the big Austrian Empire, it was a Slovenian guy, Anton Janša, Anthony in English, who was the emperor's private personal beekeeper. So the beekeeping is a really big thing. It's a really big thing in Slovenia. So what I'm saying is we produce amazing honey. My neighbor here, he will just start because now it's already some of the flowers are already starting to bloom, and we will get this beautiful honey just from my neighbor. And then I hike. So tomorrow I'll go on a hike. Probably it's going to take me maybe 10-mile hiking and a little bit of altitude difference, and I will already hit the guys who will start, the cheese makers. And you go a little bit further on, and there would be already, a small community of actually younger people that they are now really growing like organic veggies. So it's interesting also how culture is changing here in a way that younger generation realize that going back to nature and producing something pure of great taste is that, first of all, that you can make a living out of it, and that it's a great lifestyle. So this is all what you can find here in Julian Alps. And then culturally speaking, what I appreciate about Slovenia is the people. So now Slovenia is still not a tourist. It's not a tourist trap. It's not this mass tourist destination as might be like Barcelona or some other famous places in Italy, in Europe, where you have masses of people. Slovenia is still, it is absolutely discovered, so it's not undiscovered, but people are still very much appreciative of welcoming foreigners, let's say us tourists. They would really want to engage in a conversation. Most of them, they speak good English. And the thing that I really appreciate is the hospitality. So usually when I come here to the local home, the lady wouldn't just say hello, but instead of hello, she would say, "Shall I make you a coffee? Would you like to have 3 or 4 eggs?" So it's in their blood. And this is really nice. This is a really nice and warm feeling that I appreciate even when I'm traveling myself. Well, now we see here the photo of the food again. So the interesting, for example, photo is on the right-hand side, because I was now talking about the mountains in the Alps, but then just a little bit to the south, closer to Italy, we have this really, really good wine growing region. It's called Brda, or even better, in Italian language, it's called Colio. Why in Italian? Because actually this area stretches also on the Italian side, and the Italian part is super famous for their best Italian white wines, whereas on the Slovenian side, we are famous for the big reds. So you have like amazing red wine. I mean, of course, together also with the whites. And this is the place where some really, really top-notch wine is produced, and it goes directly to the fancy restaurants in New York, in Japan, to the Michelin kind of places. And here you can really get to taste it where they make it. And the other thing about the region that I mentioned before, Slovenia is really big on organic farming. So the cool thing is you're walking through Brda wine region, and you would see like orchards, and you just go and pick up a fresh fruit, and then have a glass of great wine at the local wine cellar. And then there are so many younger chefs now that they got back. So they learned, maybe in Paris, they learned in US, London, whatever, all around the world. In Italy, they got back, and now they have this cozy, nice, small restaurant, somewhere close to the vineyard, and you just enjoy yourself. So
Nice.
one thing I just wrote it down to my notebook because I think it's really important. I mean, so I'm talking now from my perspective because I really like to travel, and I usually kind of try to do 3-4 months of travel every year. And the first thing is how I operate is that I'm looking for the image. So I'm always thinking where could be the next adventure. So when I find some photos, like really beautiful photos of a certain nature somewhere in the world, I say this is it. I want to go there. But then, of course, the next thing is, I'm going to enjoy there. So what we try to do here is find beautiful places, have a nice activity, and then interaction with local people. And in the end of the day, let's be honest, a nice accommodation, maybe with a small swimming pool over a glass of wine, some other interesting drink from the region, and enjoy our holiday.
So who
Slovenia.
is this gentleman that we are looking at on this photo here with the accordion?
This happened a couple of years ago. I think this was on the second day of our hiking on the Mountain Travel Slovenia track. I just met the guy. This is so usual. This was actually the peak season in summer. And now you need to know something. Like Slovenians are crazy in terms of sports and outdoors.
Yeah.
So we are super small, but we have a lot of great athletes. We're just discussing before with Dan, Luka Doncic, the NBA player, he now just moved to the LA Lakers, so he's Slovenian. But then, the main thing in Slovenia is outdoors. So there is 2 million Slovenians, but then 150,000 of them are all members of the National Alpine Club. So, outdoors and hiking is huge. And what people do, in the summertime, they go to the mountains, but they're crazy. They bring their accordion, they bring all kind of stuff, and they're happy people. So this is the guy that we met on one of our hikes. So there were a bunch of guys, hiking and then playing the accordion. And then on the right hand side, her name is Katarina, and she actually comes from a small medieval town. Very close to Lake Bled. Maybe you saw the first photo when you started the presentation, and we see it later on again. So Lake Bled is like an iconic place in Slovenia. So let's say the number one postcard kind of perfection destination that everybody knows about in Slovenia. So this is a small medieval town next to it, and they make this beautiful. It's called Leicester gingerbread hearts. So it's a very old kind of Austrian Slovenian tradition in the Alps, and it's interesting to see that this is still alive. So why I'm talking about this, because one thing that you get to experience in the Alpine part of Slovenia, as well as in Austria when we do our Alpe Adria tour, is this kind of funky polka Oberkreiner culture. The proper Alpine experience. So the ladies are wearing traditional costumes, even on their normal day. This is not just for the show. And then you would get the Wiener Schnitzel and all kind of kitschy stuff, and a lot of a very distinctive architecture with a lot of wood, a lot of flowers, in the houses, and of course the polka music. That is really the core of the culture, together with the food. And if you're talking Alps, then I'm sure that many of you remember maybe the food of your parents, grandparents, in case they were, coming to US from, let's say, from Central Europe. So we're absolutely talking sauerkraut. We're talking
Yeah.
sausages, and then, what I really like, it's called in Austrian, it's called Kaiserschmarrn.
Yeah.
So it's like, like this big pancake. It's just so much different from what you can get in US or what is a French crepe. It's not a pancake. It's not a crepe. It's something else. It's delicious, and it always comes with a homemade jam.
Nice.
Um,
Sounds wonderful.
then I was talking about the beekeeping. So also culturally, that's very important because beekeeping is not just about the honey, but it's also about the local art, where the local artists they would paint the beehives, and they're very distinctive from village to village. And then the last photo down on the right hand side is actually the Venetian town of Piran. And this is the Slovenian coast, and this is the stuff that was always controlled and influenced by the Venetians. And this is what I really like about Slovenia. So I go skiing, for example, in the wintertime. I go skiing up in the, let's say on the slopes of Julian Alps, and then 1 hour later, I can already be down on the Adriatic, where it would be even, in February, there would be like 65, 70 degrees. I can have a nice gelato. I can have Italian espresso, because coffee is big in Slovenia. It's really big. Okay, there is a spoiler here. I mean, I also like now different kind of coffee, like single regions. But anyhow, coffee is a big thing. And
It's
as you
very
can see,
diverse landscape. It's a small country, so it's a very diverse landscape. Easily in one day, you can see quite a lot of different terrain, is what you're saying, correct? Wine country, the coast, mountains.
absolutely. And before, if I was mentioning sauerkraut, now you have, like scampi, langoustines, shrimps, fresh catch of the fish down on the coast. So yeah, I mean, you really have, different stuff that you can experience. We can move to the next slide.
See here. Ah, yes. Okay. So, Luca, this has been really wonderful. A lot of information that makes me want to go, and it makes me also very hungry listening to you talk about Slovenia and how beautiful this area is. So, maybe we should start talking about how we can experience these places with Mountain Travel Sobek. Starting with,
Absolutely. Slovenia.
starting with Slovenia. This is our classic bucket list trip, this Slovenia Julian Alps hiking tour. And we've been operating this trip for almost 20 years. I actually can't believe it's been that long. It's been about 20 years that we've been operating this trip. And I would say it ticks all the boxes. This is a great level 4 hiking trip with amazing food and scenery that changes every day. Historically, this has actually been one of our most popular Europe adventures. So why don't you tell us more about our Slovenia trip?
First of all, I really appreciate that we have, as we will see later on, that we have 3 different trips going through Slovenia because they're different level. So right now we are starting with our prime trip that we've been operating for so long. By the way, Anne, I mean, I will never forget our adventure together many years ago when we did all of these hikes together. I need to mention this because
Okay.
it was so long ago that when we traveled with Anne in here, eventually we crossed into Italy, and this was the time before Slovenia was part of the EU. Because by the way, guys, I didn't mention this before, but maybe it's still important to mention. So Slovenia is part of European Union, free open borders. Slovenia has euro, so it's very easy, to go to get around. And the water, I always try to emphasize also that the water in Slovenia is one of the best quality in the world that you can have it. So right from the tap, best of. So back to Anne. We were traveling before Slovenia was part of EU. So we crossed into Italy, And then we were zigzagging through the old town of Gorizia. It's a border town, having good coffee, pizza. We try to go back. Oops! And suddenly there is a border crossing, but it was not international one. So actually, it was very interesting to cross back in Slovenia because it was just a local border crossing and had, of course, American passport. So we got to the border, and I asked, the custom officer, "Can you let us through?" And they said, "No, no, no, this is not possible." They say, "Listen, I mean, she's going to be my wife. She's going to be maybe my wife. I can't. This would be a big shame for me. If I can't get her through." So anyhow, because they were Italian guys, they are charming, and they said, "Sure, okay, go
They
back
told
to
us to
Slovenia."
drive all the way through Austria to get back to Slovenia, and I was going to miss my flight. So desperate measures, desperate measures.
So anyhow,
that's one of my favorite stories.
Slovenia, yes. I mean, there will be great hiking. And today we were mentioning Julian Alps that are actually in the western part of Slovenia. But we actually have two more mountain ranges in Slovenia. So it's called the Kamnik-Savinja Alps, the Karavanke Alps. So basically, what is interesting that you will see really remote corners of Slovenia in terms of hiking, and for that reason, a great variety. So I could mention, the Lake Bled, then the wilder brother called like Bochin, at the foot of highest mountain, Mount Triglav. You get to see the big wall of Triglav that is like Yosemite. It's really a playground for the mountaineers. You get to see the flowers. I mean, there is chamois, there is golden horn up in the mountains, and absolutely we're gonna go and meet lots of our cheese making friends. And this is this is what I really appreciate, that I live here in the area, and then when I get to meet these people, it's like meeting friends.
Yeah. And I got to say, in 20 years of operating this trip, we've changed very little to it. Has been a very positively received and well rated trip. We haven't had to do much to it over all of these years.
And I haven't really mentioned much before, but it's not just about the nature. I mean, we start in Ljubljana, and Ljubljana is like a small Prague. So it was designed by a very famous Slovenian architect that also designed Prague. So he's called Plečnik. So the city is small, the city is green, it's all pedestrian, so it's closed for traffic, the whole town. And I think it's a really interesting place to see. And honestly, yeah, Ljubljana is now getting a fair share of popularity. But then, a lot of good food, a lot of bars, a lot of cultural events. And then when we move to the western part of Slovenia, it's not just about hiking, but this is also, let's say the infamous or famous part of the infamous Isonzo front. So this is the First World War stuff. It's really historical because this valley where I live used to be the highest battleground during the First World War. And there is an awarded museum there, and that is interesting stuff because we have a local here curator, from the museum, who explains everything, just for us. And I really like to listen to him every time I come back and I learn something new. So that would be Slovenia.
Let's see
then,
here.
Like the core, yeah. And then the next tour is.
This is Croatia, Slovenia, and Italy village-to-village walking adventure. And this one, you mentioned before that we basically have something for everyone in this part of Europe. And here's an example of a level 2 walking experience. And this trip appeals to our guests who want to experience this part of Europe at an easier pace. It is still an active trip, so there's a fair amount of walking, but it's easier than the Slovenia trip that we were just talking about. Plus, it goes through 3 countries, which is lovely, all of them known for their delicious farm-to-table cuisine. So would you say that this trip is especially appealing to foodies?
Absolutely. This is so I would say this is really like here we are a little bit on a easier pace. I think that's a great road trip, and with really incredible contrasts. Because okay, we fly to the capital of Croatia, which is Zagreb, and then quickly we move down south, southwest to the Eastern Peninsula. That is like it's like a Tuscany. So it's really interesting area on the Adriatic. So this is the proper Mediterranean. What I like about it is that there is such a difference between the coastline, which I call the blue Istria, and then the inner part, which I call the green Istria. So the coastline is about old Venetian towns. And I'm talking like really beautiful towns like Rovin, that we will see later on in the photo, and fresh catch from the sea, and smell of the lavender and pine trees, fishermen. So, I mean, the coastline is amazing, and then the inland is totally different. It's a hilly country with olive groves, with the vineyards, with amazing dining. Here is Istria is also the travel capital of the world. So this is special. I mean, we actually, go to visit the local family. They have dogs. We go out in the forest and we search for truffles. And it's kind of crazy because we all know how expensive the truffles are, and here they're just everywhere. So she would bring a plate of cheese with truffles. You would have like chocolate mousse with truffles, risotto, you name it. So an abundance of truffles incorporated in this amazing cuisine. So yeah, Istria. First photo left up left. Inland, the Green Istria, and the famous town of Motovun. Maybe you have heard that this is also the place. Motovun is also a place where a film festival is taking place every year. I mean, it's been for ages. This is the place that is regularly visited by Robert De Niro and many big Hollywood actors at the time of the film festival. Then on the right hand side we have Rovin, the Venetian town built by the Venetians, and of course a lot of farm to table dining. We discussed this some time ago. I mean, why I'm really passionate about this area, because Istria changed so much in the last, I would say, 2 decades. What happened is that the younger generation got back. So before it was always, the same in Croatia. Young people, they would move out. They wanted to go to Zagreb, the capital. They wanted to go study abroad. They never came back, and they had a lot of wine. Like they have huge amounts of wine, but it was like average. And then suddenly everything changed because the younger generation realized that they should come back. So they learned the skill, they learned the craft in France, in Italy, whatever. Came back. They had education, they had degree, they were like cosmopolitans, they traveled, and then they just stayed home, and they transformed everything in such a beautiful way that you have now, boutique winemakers. You have the best olive oil makers in the world. I mean, they win all the gold medals. They are, on the world championships, where you also have, of course, the Italian producers and the Greek and so on. So this is like a very small community with amazing results. What they have done. So I'm talking wine, I'm talking olive oil, and then of course everything that all the rest that comes together. And let not forget just to mention that this is a study that I was mentioning before. The Venetians. This is the Adriatic. So for many centuries, the Venetians were controlling the whole sea trade that got into Europe. So we had the Silk Road, we had the caravan routes. They would get to Istanbul, they would get to the Middle East, and it was the Venetians bringing all those goods together to Europe. And that's why they built these amazing towns. Of course, you heard of Dubrovnik, the pearl of the Adriatic. But then if Dubrovnik is in the south, the Rovin is in the north. And in my opinion, Rovin is as beautiful as Dubrovnik, just a little bit smaller. So this is really cool. And then you go inland, and why they built those towns on top of a hill? for a simple reason, because there were constant threat and attacks from the Turks, from the Ottoman Empire, from the east. But there were attacks sometimes, but then most of the time it was just people traveling. So you had again the caravan routes coming from Turkey, from nowadays Turkey, and they brought all this interesting stuff, from spices, from goods, from art, and it all mixed here. I'm not going to be too long talking. I have another 10 minutes. Just one more thing. I need to mention one thing, because this is really crazy. So I did a lot of exploring, in the old time of Rovin. And one day I met a guy that is actually selling the turquoise. I said, whoa, you have a proper original turquoise, which is really hard to find. And it actually comes from Tibet. And I did a lot of travel in Tibet. So I said, how come you have it? And he said, you know what? I've been exploring this together with the Croatian TV for 2 decades, all these caravan routes that came to Croatia. And of course, they also brought the stones. And here in the Rovin, and in this area of the Adriatic, they were actually diving for corals. And Tibetans, they love corals. So, they brought here the turquoise, and they were trading then corals all the way up the Silk Road, all the way to Tibet.
Wow.
Wow,
yeah. All the way to Tibet. Wow, incredible.
Istria, and from Istria we moved to Slovenia. We do the Alps. We do also the caves, because the south of Slovenia is a place that's actually dominated by the karst landscape, and so the name karst originates in Slovenia. And then of course you have the karstic landscape in Vinalec, Kuba, Guilin, China, in Thailand, Halong Bay in Vietnam, and so on. So we're talking limestones, amazing caves, underground formations, and here we do a UNESCO hike, and it's a huge underground canyon. It's called the Scotian Caves. It's a 2-hour gentle walk that will show you a totally different perspective of Slovenia.
And this is still the village to village. Sorry, I moved on to the next slide before you were done, but you're still talking about our easier
I just got a little bit too passionate about it. So it's village to village. So we have Mediterranean, we have Ljubljana, we have the Alps, and let's not forget we finish the tour in Italy. So we'll bring you all the way to the Venice. But before we hit Venice, you'll see some amazing Italian architecture. We're talking old stuff, 7, 8, 100 years or even more. And altogether, I think a really, really cool road trip.
Amazing, great road trip. Okay, so now we're looking at the Austria, Italy, and Slovenia Alpe Adria hiking adventure. This is not a new trip, but one of our newer trips in comparison. And this is a level 3 hiking experience that also travels through 3 countries, obviously. Again, something for everyone in this part of the world, easier, moderate, and challenging. What is the story behind this trip?
Okay. First, Alpe Adria is the name of a long distance hiking trail. It's over a month long. That was developed like a decade ago, and it goes from Austrian Alps. Actually, started at the foot of the highest mountain of Austria, Mount Großglockner, and then you hike across valleys and mountains of the Austrian Alps. Then you hit Slovenia. You move through Slovenia, you do my valley, you do the whole Socha River Valley, and it goes all the way down to the Mediterranean, to the famous port town of Trieste in Italy. Before it belonged to Habsburgs, to the Austrians, in between also for a short time to Slovenians. So it's a really cool trip. And this is my neighborhood. So, I go hiking and climbing to Austria every month because it's so close. So at one point we started thinking, we should really, really do Austria as well, especially because this trail is so interesting, and then decided to handpick the best parts, because obviously we can't do the whole month.
And you're saying it normally takes a month to hike it, a full month to actually hike it.
This is a long distance hiking trail. So even local people, they would do certain section of it. They say, okay, this summer 25, I will do the 6 days of the whole trail, or they will come back in fall or the next year and so on. So I tried to hike most of it. Practically all of it. and then we really handpicked, in my opinion, the best sections of this whole long distance trail, and put it in a 10 day program. But actually, it's not just hiking. I would say it's a road trip and hiking. So we start at the very iconic city of Salzburg, Mozart and stuff, and a great old town. And then we do one of the most amazing mountain roads that you can do in the European Alps. It's called Hochalpine Straße in German. It's a high Alpine road, and you actually traverse the Austrian Alps first by car, by vehicle. So this is like a really, really cool road trip that you can only do in the summertime. And then you get into the hearts of Austrian Alps at the foot of Mount Grossglockner that you can see on the left-hand side. And this is the start of our trek. So we actually hike all the way up to the glacier. And, this is already very different from the Slovenian Alps. This is more, like closer to the image of the Central Alps, like you find in France or Switzerland. Proper glacier, big-time mountains, turquoise lakes, glacial lakes. So a great way to start the hike. And then we descend down and we walk through the valleys and lakes of Austria. And what I really like here, is this Oberkreiner culture that I was explaining before. You get to the local boutique hotel, and the lady down there on the left-hand side, she greets us there, and she prepares like a fresh strudel. She just bakes a strudel. You get in, and she says, "Yeah, come for a piece. I mean, it's still hot." And then the family, they do their own herbs. They have herb garden. They grow everything, around the house, and it looks so cozy and like a visiting a family. But then let's be honest, it's still like a boutique hotel with sauna, with swimming pool, with top-notch food and stuff like that. So, Austrians are really good at that. Their hospitality is amazing. And for a change of scenery, I really like their kitschy kind of, Alpine architecture. They're very special with that. And from Austria, we go to the Italian Alps just a tiny little bit. There are some great hikes close to Slovenia. And then we move down to Trieste, which is a very special place, because Trieste was built by the Habsburgs, by the Austrians, even though that now it's like the very famous Italian port, and it's the coffee capital of Italy. So it's not Rome, it's not some other place, but it's Trieste, that it's a coffee capital of Italy. And this was Trieste was used to be a very funky place. Let's say in the 19th, start of the 20th century, it was one of the most progressive cities in Europe. So all the religions, all people live there, different religions, lots of artists. So it has a very strong, cultural, I would say, feel to it.
All right.
All right.
Well, this is our last trip that we were going to talk about today, and we won't go on too much about this one because actually it is full in 2025, but we wanted to give you a little bit of a preview for 2026. This one is our Slovenia, Croatia, and Montenegro Grand Traverse multi-adventure. This actually started out, this is going to be a one-time only, invitation only trip led by actually myself. I curated this trip for a special group, and it filled with a wait list immediately. So while it's not possible to join this one in 2025, we now have our dates available for 2026. So what is this trip? I wanted a trip that explored my favorite places along the Adriatic with the added inspiration of Mr. Poznic here, who has many years of personal experience traveling along the coastline aboard his second home, his sailboat. So this is more of a journey than it is an actual trip. It's 2 rather decadent weeks spanning, again, 3 countries, and it's designed for hikers who also want to really spend some time with the best aspects of the destination, not just the trails, the food, the wine, the crystal clear water, the islands, the mountains, the ancient villages, the historic sites, all of it. This is a trip packs a lot of punch into 2 weeks. It's already very popular, so if you are interested in this trip, you'd want to sign up for the 2026 departures fairly early. Sign up fast, it's going to fill up. Did you want to add anything about this trip, Luka, while we're at it?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the also the stuff that I was really passionate to design together with you. Um, Especially because it's again it's you see so many different things, like you really move. I mean, first you move down the Adriatic, and we know Adriatic is like just beautiful. I mean, all the islands and Dalmatia and so on. I mean, you start in the Alps. I mean, you do Alps, you do the Adriatic. It's already a really good combination. And then you actually do the Balkans. And people they often say, Slovenia is in the Balkans. Maybe geographically we are at the start, in the very western part of it, but more likely we would say we don't belong really to the Balkans. And this, especially the Montenegro, this is the heart of the Balkans. So this is exotic. This is so different, culturally speaking, and it's wild. And the nature also in Montenegro, this is the country of huge canyons. I mean, wild mountains. Shepherds they still go around on a white horse surrounded by dogs that look like wolves. Um, but they have this Balkan hospitality. And because I speak the language, let's not forget that back in the time we were all part of Yugoslavia, the same country. It's a really warm feeling that you feel like you're in Tibet, but you can talk to the people. They're super nice. And yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to this. This is going to be great.
Me too. Me too. I'm excited to go back for sure. Okay, so moving on. Those are our 4 trips. Maybe you could mention a little something about our guides. We have some outstanding guides on these trips. Just take a moment to talk about them, our team.
Yeah. Let's start with the right guy on the right hand side. He actually looks older now than he's on this photo. He's one of my, I mean, they're all my dear friends. Andrzej is really special. I mean, you will see the energy, his energy. I mean, he's always smiling. This guy is always smiling. I mean, he's such a positive person. And then he is an expert outdoor guy. So, he was with the Scouts. He's a mountaineer. Right now, he's in New Zealand. So he's coming back tomorrow. A month and a half ago, he was in Patagonia. He spends like a lot of time with me here in the Socha Valley. We do a lot of mountain biking together, hiking. He's very knowledgeable, and I just love him. And then we have on the left hand side we have Ivana. She is a really really seasoned guide. English is her major, was her major at the university. The thing is that all of us that we guide together in this region, like, we're really good friends. We've known each other for many years, and we share the same passions. And it always starts with traveling. And so traveling is big for all of us. So Ivana is also a big time traveler. And then, it's interesting. I mean, she's into sports. She's a great cook. In the city, she can be very feminine and, like a proper lady. I'm saying this because, on the other hand, she rides dirt bikes. That's why I mentioned it. It's such an interesting person because she did a lot of motorbiking, dirt biking. She just got back from Vietnam, doing the dirt biking there. But otherwise, yeah, she's a big hiker, and you will find her in Slovenian Alps. And she's also expert on wine. She's really big on wine. And then, of course, Roman in the middle, one of our most seasoned guys, my best friend for ages. Well, there is so much that I could talk about Roman. I mean,
Roman's been leading our mountain travel trips for how long?
For
At
a
least
really long
almost all the 20
time.
years. Yeah.
So we did half of my travels was done with him. He lived in Asia for many years. He even actually ran like a backpacker, like a kind of resort on the beach in Cambodia. Spent months alone in Himalayas. And we did a lot of stuff here together in Slovenia.
And really, just really dear people, I know that we get a lot of feedback from our travelers about how special these guides are. And in general about these trips, we just threw this slide in here, as evidence. We get a lot of really positive. It's a very popular area for us. We've been traveling in this part of Europe since, well, obviously I said 20 years ago, but we were one of the first of the US companies to operate trips in Croatia and Slovenia and other points where we travel here too. And so we feel very comfortable in this space. Our guides are outstanding, and it shows in the feedback that we get from our guests. Is it still possible to travel on any of these trips in 2025? Yes, we do have availability on all of the trips except for the one that I mentioned, the Grand Traverse. That one is open for bookings in 2026, but there is still space to join us in 2025. And if you're interested, please do give us a call. I do want to give us a little time for questions because I know that we have some here. So Luka, if you're ready, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add, or maybe we can just move on to our questions.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's see here what questions are coming in. Somebody has asked, what can I expect with the level of accommodations on this trip, on these trips?
Well, it's all hotel based. It's all hotel based.
No huts, no camping.
No huts, no camping. Mostly boutique hotels. For example, here in the Socha Valley, we have a little bit of lack of accommodation. So the place here, this is the place that we refer to it as a mountain lodge. It's a hotel, but we'd rather say a mountain lodge because it's built that way. But it's still like everywhere there would be a private room with bathroom, and most of the time it's actually boutique hotels. A nice swimming pool, a bottle of good wine in the afternoon. So we absolutely try to avoid big places with no character and looking for something more unique. So in that terms, that's what I was mentioning before. It's really comfortable. So in the end of the day, when you did some proper hiking, and exercising, you really get to enjoy yourself, and you finish with a nice dinner. And yeah, after all, this is holiday, right?
Right. Okay, next question. How rugged is the terrain on the Slovenia Julian Alps hiking trip? And I imagine probably maybe you could talk about some of that rocky stuff that we navigate.
Yeah, I really appreciate this question. I think it's very important. So let's be honest. Julian Alps are made of limestone. It's rock. It's not as smooth as the circle around the Mont Blanc or stuff like that. I did some hiking there, and I know that some of the trails there are really smooth. So we are talking trails that are marked, that are not vertical, most of the time comfortable, but you can absolutely expect every now and then that there would be some loose rocks, and rocks in general. Not all the time, obviously, because we were saying before that you start in the valley, and of course if you walk in the valleys, it's all smooth and grass and nice and soft. You go further up and still the trails are nice, but then very much on top of it, sometimes you have a short section that is a little bit rockier, but still comfortable trails, technically not challenging, but I do recommend two things. One is the hiking poles. I really recommend hiking poles. I use them all the time. I know that in the US it's not as common as it is in Europe, because here also all the mountaineers, the alpinists, we all have them. So hiking poles, I think, are very much recommended, and a sturdy boots, a proper hiking boots.
High ankle.
Yeah, I don't want to go in this fierce debating, once we're on the trail, what is proper or not, because some people, they're really in love of their, kind of trail running sneakers and stuff, but because of the rocks and stuff, and sometimes, you can have like afternoon shower, so it gets slippery a little bit. I would really go for the proper shoes.
Yeah,
and
but
this is
there's
sorry.
no
This is the Slovenia Julian Alps.
Julian Alps.
Yeah, of course, Istria to Venice. is very, very smooth, like easy peasy. The Alpe Adria is also proper hiking, maybe a little bit smoother because we do also more valleys and stuff. But to sum up, no, I mean, if you suffer from vertigo, no problem. There are no, like dangerous places like this. It's not technical. It's just good to have trekking poles.
Yeah, and no scrambling, no use of ladders or anything like that, right? No
No,
via
no,
ferrata. Okay.
no, no.
We have two people who have asked, would these trips be good for first-time travelers to Europe? And I understand the question.
Yes.
Eastern Europe, this part of the world, it was maybe a little bit late to come into the adventure scene after Western Europe, but we've been here for quite a while. So why don't you talk about that?
Well, I gonna argue that this is not Eastern Europe. That this is Eastern Europe in the, in the mind of many people outside Europe because of our history. Because absolutely, in this aspect, we are part of the Eastern Europe because we used to be part of Yugoslavia. By the way, I need to mention this. Yugoslavia was not part of the Eastern Bloc. So the famous President Tito, after the Second World War, he actually fought Stalin. He opposed to Stalin, and Yugoslavia was this funky socialist state that ran its own kind of, lifestyle and political agenda. So anyhow, in this aspect, we are Eastern Europe. Otherwise, like I said, 2 hours to Venice, 3 hours to Vienna. So I would rather hear Central.
Central Europe. Okay, thank you. Eastern part of the Alps then. Eastern tip
Absolutely.
of the Alps, because this is the Julian Alps are in the Alps
Yeah.
range.
Yeah,
Just the
absolutely.
far
I
eastern
mean,
end. Yeah,
because the thing is, from Julian Alps, just another jump and you're already in the Dolomites. So we go for the weekend,
yeah.
very often.
True, Luka. Okay, another question. What type of food will I expect to see? Well, you talked a lot about the food, but specifically, will you be able to accommodate most diets? Let's say someone's vegan or vegetarian, gluten-free.
I think this is now so common that we absolutely are able to accommodate that. We really try our best. And so far we have always been able to accommodate that. Now if you're talking, like certain diets, but otherwise, I'll tell you one thing. Couple of years ago, actually not a couple of years ago, when we started, operating, guiding Istria to Venice, so the Croatia, Slovenia, Italy trip, I had two ladies from California. They had all these diets. And on the first day, when they saw what we are eating, they said, Luka, I'll be honest with you. I'm really living a healthy lifestyle. I do yoga, I do organic, veggies, and I put this diet on just because usually I get this food that's really not healthy. And I rather do it that way to make it safer. And then, she realized that we have fresh produce because, it's
Mhm.
also my obsession. To honestly, I
I know.
like to eat. I like to eat good products. It doesn't have to be Michelin kind of level of the restaurant, but I really like to have a good product. A local tomato from the neighbor's garden, not the stuff imported. I don't know, from Spain. Doesn't matter where. So on our tours, most of the time the food will be locally sourced.
Yeah.
And in the time of the blueberries, you will have a lot of blueberries for dessert together with the ice cream or whatever, and the meat will be here from the valley. And the same from cheese and for the veggies. And no worries if you are a vegetarian, my wife is vegetarian, or if you are vegan, we can accommodate that.
This is a common question that we are asked because I think there is a misperception that Slovenia is home to sausage and potatoes, and
That was
that the food is bland, which is absolutely not the case. In fact, there's a famous chef who's been on Chef's Table on Rush, who who cooks from the land there. I mean, I found the food to be extremely varied, very fresh, very farm to table, abundance of produce, as you've just mentioned, all the things. So that's misperception.
I did mention before a lot of, the sauerkraut and sausages, because I know that, sometimes, our guests are craving for that because this is the memories of the past of their grandparents and so on. But then, we have we are strongly influenced by the Italians. So we have lots of salads, lots of pasta. We have really good meats. It's really versatile food. And absolutely not bland.
Okay, I think that we have more questions, but we're out of time. So thank you, Luka, so much for being here and for this wonderful presentation. We do need to bring the presentation to a close now before we get cut off. If any of you still have questions or would like to speak to one of our trip consultants about any of these trips, please do feel free to call us at the number listed below at the very bottom of the slide. And thank you all for joining us today. We hope to see you in Slovenia.